Before I start the video, I just want to give a shout out to Jonas Olsen, who made the texture breakdown node that I use in this video. I forgot to mention his name in the video, and that's not cool. He deserves clout. So go over to his Gumroad and download this, maybe throw him some money even though it's free. And he also has some other really useful Substance Designer nodes. Cool. Hey everybody. I am going to show today how I make a template for Substance Designer. And what I mean by that is there's a lot of little things here laid out straight ahead for me so when I come in here I don't have to worry about it. I just have one output leading to all the results. It was really bugging me in a lot of tutorials how I would notice people would be operating like this, where all the wires are shoved into a node, and every time they made a new node, they would like grab them all and put them all in, and it's so unsatisfying. So this template has helped me a lot. I was actually making this template every time I started a new file at first, but then I realized you could make a template, so just thought I'd get the information out there. So if you're not familiar with what I mean, when you create a new substance, there's a list of templates here you can select from. And generally people just use the PBR metallic roughness, which looks like this. And I was starting with this every time as well. And just basically repeating the exact same steps every single time. And that got really tedious. So so I made this template. And in addition, I'm also going to show you this texture breakdown thing that just lets you have those nice social media breakdowns for your textures. And having that set up right at the beginning can be really helpful. That is a custom node, so I'll link that in the description. And if you don't know how to add those, I'll show you real quick now. So this is how you when you're making templates, the first thing you need to do is go to projects here in your preferences, and then over here, general, click that, and it has a list of template directories. And in here you can add a new folder to use as your template. So in my Substance Designer, it's actually in a different place than where it just sent me there. So that's where you're going to be saving your template file when you make it. So if you want custom nodes, you're going to need to, over here under library, add a library path, same way as the template path. And there you can add the texture breakdown node I'll provide in the description. All right, so let's get started making the template. So the first thing that I do is I make a reroute node, and I'm just going to plug a uniform color into it, a grayscale uniform color, just so that it's not acting like I have a bunch of errors on my lines. So the main thing is, this is your main height data. Like if I had, actually, let's use a tile generator just so it's easier to see. So this is your main height data. So I'm going to plug this into the normal, and you can see that it shows up here. This is used for like a bunch of different things here. So I'm going to set that all up. So first plug it into the normal, and then you can drag it down and type HBAO, which is the ambient occlusion node, and plug that into the ambient occlusion output. You can delete this. And then I had a lot of reroutes so that my wires don't get all messed up. So I like to put a reroute here. You can just click Alt, I believe is the shortcut, but I have it as R. And then down here, this will go, I'll add another reroute just so that it's nice and neat. And this will go straight into the height data down here. Cool. And now the one really custom thing I like to do is for roughness, it's good to get like as a base roughness, just so the higher areas are shinier than the lower areas, even if just by a little bit. Just that little bit of a nuance really helps. So a good way to do that is take a normal, make a new one, and I'm going to move these roughness things over here for a sec. So you're going to want to set this normal intensity to something really high. I just set it to 10. Oh, that is 101. And then drag out curvature smooth from this. Now there's an issue with the curvature smooth sometimes where it has like a weird gradient over it, but if you change the tiling mode to absolute, it fixes that for some reason. I didn't have it here, but if you have weird issues, try that and it should probably work. So what this is doing is giving us white areas on the high parts and black areas in the low parts. But the thing is, for roughness, we actually want it to be opposite. So I'm going to put a levels node here, and I'm going to take these two slider thingies on the very bottom, and I'm going to invert them, and that will invert my whole system. And now if I want to make it generally rougher, I can drag this one in, and it'll become more white. Or if I want to make it shinier, I can drag this one, and it'll become more dark. So I'm going to plug that into roughness, and this will just be my base roughness. So you can see, as I drag this, the cube here becomes much shinier, or vice versa, becomes more matte. And cool, so that's that finished. So these are actually all of the base normal general outputs you use. So I'm going to take this reroute here, and I'm going to press C, which will create a frame, and I'm going to change the color. I like to use purple for outputs, but you can do whatever, and name it outputs. So here's my base outputs. I'm not actually going to bother saving this right now, but so that's the main thing done. Even if you just did this, this would save so much time every time you start a new file. I'm going to quickly throw some frames on these. So I like to use browns for roughness. And I'm going to name this roughness output and base roughness. All right, so if you want to add any data to your roughness, instead of having to like shove it all in here, you can just go in here, add like a blend, add a grunge map. And what I usually do is I just drag another levels node off of here and plug it into there. And then say I want the grunge map areas to be shiny, I can just make this one darker and you'll get like this nice roughness data here. And then I'll usually frame these off like this. Or, to be honest, because I'm addicted to reroutes, I'll usually do this, put a reroute there, and do something like that, so that it's a lot more compact. But since this is a template, I'm actually going to delete this stuff here. That was just for sake of example. All right, now the next part actually is the color. I'm actually going to take the color out of this outputs thing, because generally color is just so separate from all this other stuff. I like to keep it as its own thing. I usually use black frames for color, black frames, because they won't interfere with the color. That's how it works in my mind. And plus it's really easy to make the frame by just cranking the vibrance down to 0. So I'm going to call this color output. And now that's set up here. And I like to keep it nice and back here with the roughness output because I usually use the roughness maps to color stuff near the end. So that's pretty much that set up. Now one piece of just convenience I'd like to do is I add a reroute like in the middle here, so that I just have to move the reroute rather than having to move the color output. Like rather than having to like drag this from here every time, I can just use this reroute here. And I'm going to do the same thing here. I use green frame just so it's easier to grab, and I don't usually label them, but if you want to label them, you can. Cool. Now that is, oh, whoops. Sometimes with reroutes, they're pesky. Like they don't like to stay in frames if they're too small. Okay, these are good. These are good. Okay. All right. Now, one extra thing I like to do is I add an opacity output, just in case I'm doing something like foliage. So first I'm going to take one of my outputs and I'm going to copy and paste it. and then I'm going to make sure I click it, because sometimes it leaves this up when clicked. And I'm going to rename it opacity. I'm going to relabel it opacity. And I'm going to come down here and change the usage to opacity. And then I'm going to, first of all, let's get rid of this. So the way I normally do opacity is, let's say I have like a shape here, and it's my output. So you can see the circle here, and say I want all of this area to be translucent. So what I would normally do is I take this, I drag off from the main height data, and I make a histogram scan. And if you pump up the contrast, you can basically make a mask of all of the areas that aren't just pure black. And then you just plug that into the opacity, and right-click opacity and click View in 3D View and Opacity. And then you should see this like that. So the problem is, if I were to delete this, then it's going to be like that because it's white. So usually what I do is I just make a uniform color here to basically act as a placeholder. So if I were to need the opacity, I could just drag this down and plug it right into the histogram scan. Otherwise, there's just this uniform color here keeping everything nice and opaque. Now, that is basically all the main outputs completely done. The only thing to do now is the texture preview. So if it was just like this is already perfect. So now, texture breakdown. So if you have it in your folder, you just type space and type breakdown. It comes with two versions. One of them are like up and down. It's kind of hard to demonstrate. Yeah, like this. One of them are up and down like this. And the other one is side to side like this. I like using the side to side one, plus you can adjust the skew of it to be up and down if you really wanted to. Skew amount, yeah, skew here. So I think it's more versatile. So I normally use 5 outputs here. And so the problem we immediately run into with this is it feels like you're gonna have to drag like a fuckload of random wires here into this, and it's gonna be really obtuse and annoying, and we want to avoid that as much as possible. So the first thing I do is I add a reroute right before my color output, just for the color info. And then I'm going to add another reroute here just to keep it nice and compact. You know, I like, oh, this is what I'm talking about, where the reroutes are stubborn. I have no idea why that one won't. Okay, there we go. And then we're going to plug the color output into the breakdown. And then the next one, if we're going in order, we're going to want normal next. But this is where I find you don't want to just pull a bunch of wires from this because it's quite annoying. So what I do is I make another reroute off of the main tree of things going on here, and I stretch this out. I'm going to make another reroute here. So I'm going to use this pathway here to get all of this data again. So I'm going to make another normal node, and I'm going to make another ambient occlusion node. Now the only issue with this is that if I were to adjust these methods, here, they wouldn't show up here. Personally, that's not that huge of a deal though, because I generally only mess with the normal intensity and ambient occlusion very slightly. So I can always come in here and change it if I need. So, and then the other one is just the straight height data, so we don't need a node for that. The normal, we can just plug directly in here, and then we have the normals. And next, I would do roughness. So I'm going to do a similar thing to the roughness here to what I did with the color. Just make 2 reroutes here. Make sure these are lining up. Okay, it's good now. And I'm going to need a gradient map. Now that'll just convert the grayscale input to a color input. And if you press D, you can actually collapse the gradient map in here. So I'm going to do that because I don't really need to see it. I'm going to do the same thing off this ambient occlusion. And I'm going to plug that in here and press D. And then I need one more, and that's just the height data. So I'm gonna make a reroute here just so it's a bit more nice. And then plug that gradient map in. And there you should have, it looks weird because it's a circle. let me make it a uniform color. Okay, now you should have all your maps here. You have your base color, your normals, your roughness, your ambient occlusion, and your height. Obviously, if you wanted more, you could plug them all in, but this is good enough for me. So the last thing you're gonna need to do here is make a new output. And let's make this one from scratch just so you can see how it's done. Over here, just change the label like before. Let's do texture breakdown. And then go down here to usage, click add item, and change it to base color. Just I'm not sure if it matters, but I feel like base color works. And then I think this should be fine if you leave it at default, but I'll click that anyway. And then I just add a frame here, make it purple because it's an output, and I'll label it. Now, this is still kind of annoying to me, the amount of wires coming off of this. So sometimes I'll add a reroute near the edge just to make it sort of maintain its general shape so that these wires, like if you look at this wire, if I move it around, it's gonna stretch in a very annoying way. And I don't really like that. So I'm gonna add a reroute right here, just so that whenever I move this, it's a lot more expected what the wires will do. All right, so now if I need to add more outputs, if I need to add more stuff here, I can always just take these and drag them, and it's not a big deal. And if I were to go to export outputs, you can see that I have texture breakdown as an option for a map I can export now, as well as opacity. So yeah, that is about it. Oh, one more thing. For some reason, even though the default, okay, this is a kind of a rabbit hole, but sometimes when you export your things to engines like Unreal, the color channel will be a little off. It's supposed to be 8 bits, but for some reason it doesn't play nice. So what you can do is change this to absolute, and for some reason that makes it work more consistently. And since all the rest of the nodes will be relative to parent, they'll inherit this absoluteness. It's just good to have it like that in the template so you don't have to worry about it. I know that that's kind of like a little complicated tangent, but when you import your stuff into Unreal and the colors just look wrong for some reason, it's just annoying, and this will help a lot with that. All right, so yeah, that's basically it. This is our template finished. If it's saved in your folder and you go new substance, it should be at the bottom here is whatever you named it. Mine is named material template. And if you click that, then it'll default to that every single time you start a new thing. And it saves a lot of time. Cool, so I hope y'all found that helpful. I might do more Substance Designer tutorials in the future. And yeah, thank you. Like, comment, subscribe if you liked it and it was helpful. All right, have a good one.